In tonight's Government Insider, the debt deal. President Obama signed a 2-year budget today, averting another fiscal cliff. But what does it mean for federal employees? For insight, we turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Joe Davidson, federal diary columnist at the Washington Post. Joe, this deal means no federal shutdown is likely, though not impossible, for at least another 2 years, and a 1.3% pay increase in 2016. How significant is this deal to government employees?
Well, it's very significant because for so long the government has been operating on temporary spending measures known as continuing resolutions, or CR in the lingo of Washington, and those only run for a limited period of time. And what happens is when these temporary funding measures run out, there's always the danger that the government will shut down, or if the government does not pass a budget, there's this danger that we could have a government shutdown, such as we did 2 years ago when many government offices closed for 16 days. That was a disaster, and I think nobody wants to repeat that. And so this budget deal gives us at least some sense of stability, and I think it's a pretty good sense of stability for the next 2 years.
Federal workers and labor unions have been watching the budget debate play out on Capitol Hill. Many expressed concerns over measures that would cut pay and benefits.
Right.
Were any of those plans included in the final deal?
No, the federal employees basically escaped or dodged that bullet because for a number of years, Republicans, particularly in the House, had recommended a number of measures that really would have taken money from the wallets and pocketbooks of federal employees. One prominent one, for example, was one which would have resulted really in a pay cut of about 5 or 6% because it would have caused federal employees to pay more out of their own pockets toward their retirement programs. And so it would have been a cut in their real wages. That was not in, and some other measures were not in that could have adversely affected the federal workforce.
Joe, Uncle Sam has been in a state of brinksmanship for the past few years, and federal workers have had to deal with the roller coaster ride. Now that they have a little more breathing room, what are unions doing to prepare for the next budget fight? Is it too soon to predict the obstacles they'll face in 2017?
Well, I think one thing that they're always on the lookout for is cuts to agency budgets, because when agency budgets are cut, this clearly has an effect on the federal workers that are there. It prevents the agency from hiring more federal workers. And so having agency budget cuts is something they're always on the lookout against, as well as attempts to cut retirement. As I indicated, that's been a perennial effort or goal on the part of Republicans. And so I think just because there's this breathing room, if you will, for the moment, that doesn't mean it's going to last all the way throughout the next couple of years. I think these kinds of attempts will likely continue.
Yep, that's a very good point. All right, let's switch gears. Postal unions and civil rights groups are pushing the U.S. Postal Service to get into the banking business. Why?
Well, the postal unions, I think that this is a way to shore up the strength of the post office, the Postal Service, which has been struggling for the past number of years, struggling financially. If you bring more business into the post office, then it makes that institution stronger, and I think the postal unions see a benefit in that, not just for the citizens, but for their workers, clearly. So I think they have a vested interest in having a strong post office. Civil rights organizations see postal banking as a way to combat the payday and loan industry, which can have incredibly high interest rates, and it's generally the unbanked, the lower income people who don't have bank accounts, who use these payday lenders and who end up getting essentially cheated, although legally, by companies who have these high interest rates. And I've talked with people who end up paying back a loan that is many, many times what the principal was. And so if there's a postal banking operation that provides loans, then the civil rights groups see this as a way of helping out low income and underserved communities, because the post offices are everywhere and places where banks are not.
It's very interesting, but the agency is resisting the idea, saying it doesn't know anything about banking, but they've tried financial services before, Joe, with the postal savings system.
That's right.
What was that, and is it a model that could be used again?
Well, the post office actually did provide some banking services for decades, starting in about 1910 or 1911. But that banking service did not, while it provided some savings accounts, it did not offer loans. And so if it was just what the saving system previously did, it wouldn't solve the loan question, but it would provide a place where people could go to put their savings. But they say they don't really have any expertise in this, as if they had not already had a banking service for many decades. And so there are efforts to get the post office to go in this direction. I think it's still a ways before this comes to fruition, if it ever does, but it is the kind of thing that people are pushing for, and someday down the road we might see additional banking services at the post office.
Good to have you on board with all this information. Joe Davidson, Federal Diary columnist with the Washington Post. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.